Good evening, Dr. Bro's class. My name's Amber Newton,
And I'm Chelsea Edmonds.
and we're going to be talking about counseling sexual minorities. In particular, we're going to be referring to them as GLBT youth. This means gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual youth. Sometimes you'll even find some of the terminology online as GLBTQQ, and that would be queer or questioning. And someone who is gay, we'll go over terminology a little bit. Someone who is gay is a male who likes a male. Someone who's lesbian is a female that likes another female. Transgender is a male or female that feels like they are the opposite sex trapped in their body. So born a male, but feels like they're a female, and they've always felt that way in their life. And then the questioning, I think that's a good reason that's been added a little bit here lately, because the way I feel is that it seems like point in time during all these people going through high school that there'd be a questioning phase where they just don't really know what's going on. So this brings us to, is it a mental disorder or not? And actually, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder until about 1973, the APA voted to remove homosexuality from the DSM and to remove the stigma of a mental illness. It seems that some parents thought that they could bring their children to counselors and they could be cured. But this isn't true. You cannot cure something that's just inherently what you are. Some examples would be conversion therapy of the 70s and 80s or gay camps. But these ended up really traumatizing the people that went there, and it said that they were some of the hardest times of their life. However, for the transgender, they're not quite so lucky. It's even still considered that cross-dressing or gender identity, I guess, can be signs of mental illness. So the transgendered are trying to get this label removed also. And although not considered a mental disorder, social discrimination can lead to higher rates of major depression, generalized anxiety disorder, and substance abuse. And these are all listed in the DSM also. And Chelsea explained a little bit later some of the statistics. And one of the reasons why we're going after this topic is because such high rates of suicide lately and more numbers of teens coming out in school and coming out to their parents. And it's also a lot in the public eye with TV shows and celebrities. So, and although not a mental disorder, it's been found that some health professionals report inappropriate practices, and it is agreed that they need better education and training. So even though they may see it as not an illness, they still have these preconceived notions when talking with clients. So they need to be trained in a way that they can kind of leave their personal views at the door and take their clients seriously. And GLBT clients feel more comfortable disclosing to health professionals that did not use heterosexist language or intake forms. And heterosexist language is, a therapist would ask their client, do you have a boyfriend or do you have a girlfriend? Things like that, not considering their sexuality.
Right.
So now Chelsea's going to talk a little more about statistics.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, 4 to 10% of the U.S. population identifies as homosexual. So it will definitely be important for us to know these things, obviously, because we're going to come across these youth. GLBT youth are 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than heterosexual youth. And like you said, the recent surge of suicides that we've heard about because of the bullying and stuff, because of their sexuality. They also experience depression 4 to 5 times more severely than heterosexuals, which I thought was interesting. And there's also an alarmingly high amount of verbal or physical harassment and even physical assault. And 90% of GLBT youth reported that at least one of these things has happened to them in the last year. 64% of gay youth report feeling unsafe in school because of their sexual orientation, which is good for school counselors to know. They're also more likely to abuse substances than heterosexuals. And like we read in our book, the substance abuse and depression isn't necessarily just because they're homosexual. A lot of times it's because of how society responds to that, the bullying and the teasing and the rejection that sometimes occurs can lead to that depression and substance abuse.
So they're not depressed because they're gay. They're comfortable
Right.
with it. But because of all the things going on and people bullying them
Yeah.
and messing with them, that's what's causing them to be
Exactly.
depressed.
Exactly. It's also important for us to know the concerns of GLBT youth, so we can get into their world and kind of get on their level. They often feel different from their peers. They sometimes feel guilty and shameful about it. And, you know, as we're going to talk about later, especially if you come from a religious home or you are religious and you've been taught your whole life that that's wrong, you know, that has to be really hard to feel that guilt and shame about it, which we'll talk about later. But they often worry what the response will be from their friends and family. Are they still going to be loved and accepted? You know, obviously some are teased and ridiculed, which can stop them from joining clubs, joining sports and schools and things like that. And other concerns are AIDS, HIV, and STDs, which if you just think about all those concerns on a teenager's plate, like that's a lot for them to be dealing with.
Sure, you can imagine a teenager going through, you know, puberty in high school or middle school. That alone is hard enough. But then
Right.
you have this confusion or all these other issues and bullying and all these things on top of that. It's just got to be really tough and hard. That's why counselors are so important, you know.
Definitely. So you're going to talk to us about some counselor issues and parents.
Yeah, so that brings us kind of to the parents. Parents play a huge role in kind of the happiness of their children, especially now since more kids are kind of coming out. The mother's the first person who they sort of talk to. You know, they'll talk to their friends, and then the mom is the primary parent who they go to talk to. And for them, this can be an extremely terrifying time. On TV, they kind of make it seem like, you know, oh, I'm coming out, and that's okay. It's not a big deal, but it's a huge obstacle for them.
Yeah.
They have fear of being rejected or their parents being angry at them. And these are also difficult for parents as well. And you may come across this counseling the parents or counseling the parent and child themselves. The parents go through feeling rejection, you know, either rejected from their child or rejection for their child. Anger, grief, and shock. Shock is the first thing. And a lot of times parents feel loss of their child.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? Where did my little girl go? And
Right.
because they have a societal image of their children that, you know, my little girl's going to grow up to be a ballerina or a dancer
Right.
or whatever their boy is. And it's especially tough for parents that have transgendered children too, because they want to change their whole identity, or some of them may want to start hormone treatments as young as high school and changing exactly what they are. They want to change their name, their whole identity.
Yeah.
And I watched a program the other night, and it said that one of the mothers reported that she felt like her child had died, and this was somebody else, because it just changes all their expectations or whatever you think about their child. Some parents also feel to blame, like it was their fault that they were homosexual or transgender, that they did something, they were influenced the wrong way or raised the wrong way, but this isn't true. Also, the social stigma. They might be okay with their child, but they worry that they're going to be bullied at school, or what people are going to think, their family and friends. How do they tell their family at weddings when they say, oh, is your son married yet? And, you know, so it's that stigma.
Right.
And some parents may accept that their child is gay, but may still protest it in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I accept that you're gay, but do you have to flaunt it around the house? Do you have to have rainbow flags? Do you have to wear certain clothes? So that's still issues. Another reason or issue could be that they feel that it's unnatural or that it's a sin. Some of the religious views may be conflicting with that also. So acceptance takes time is the most thing that I had found in any of the research. And PFLAG, parents, friends, I can't remember, it was parents, friends, family, I think for lesbians and gays maybe, but it was a whole group, but online. And we'll go over that in class too. We have tons of resources that you can use as counselors, and for the parents and for the children. But it's just something that has to be faced. And if the parents can accept the child, then the child is more likely to accept themselves and feel comfortable around their peers also. So can you tell us a little bit about GLBT youth of color?
Yes. I was actually very surprised that I didn't find more resources for GLBT youth of color because, we talked about in class double minorities, triple minorities, and in some cases, like an African American lesbian female, that's a triple minority. And so you would think that more attention would be paid to that, but there really isn't much out there. I do have a few findings that say LGBT youth of color reported hearing both homophobic and racist remarks at school. They also report feeling unsafe at school because of their sexual orientation, gender expression, or their race or ethnicity. And last, they reported being harassed or assaulted because of their sexual orientation or race or ethnicity. So based on those facts, if you just think about having to go to school, I remember going to school, and it's often really hard, but can you imagine having to worry about, are they going to make fun of me today for my ethnicity, that I'm a minority? Are they going to make fun of me because I'm gay? Just having to worry about all those things. And so, and there are several organizations out there, for gay people, but there's not that many for these double and triple minorities. And I think that there needs to be more. There are also some gender differences, just a couple. Gay males have a higher rate of suicide than lesbian females. And then there was one study that found that lesbian females were punished more harshly for small crimes such as like smoking or something, than gay males, which I thought was interesting.
Sure, and I guess punished more than their straight, like heterosexual
Yeah.
peers also. And I'd also read that, especially for Latino or African American youth, that it's harder. The coming out process can be harder too, because they may not feel that they're accepted within their communities. So,
Right.
or difficult, especially for males, to do that too.
Yeah.
And some of the things to remember about counseling these youth is that don't automatically assume your clients are heterosexual. That means when somebody comes walking into you, instead of saying, are you having problems with your boyfriend, say, are you seeing somebody that you may be having problems with? That's not using heterosexist language. And you cannot tell whether someone is straight or gay just by looking at them. People dress all certain ways, and you can't assume something about a person just when they walk into the door. Using inclusive language, be accepting and open of them. Use the vocabulary the youth uses. There's maybe certain terms that they're using. And that's important when you work with teens anyway. To know what they're talking about and also to meet them on their level. Remember that behavior does not equal identity and vice versa. They could be acting out in a certain way. It doesn't necessarily mean that they feel that way. And be supportive of clients who identify as heterosexual but are attracted to people of the same sex. And like we discussed earlier, it's confusing time enough. And then if you have questions about who you're attracted to, don't automatically label them as gay, but then also don't disregard them if they say that they're gay.
Exactly.
So it's a really sensitive area. You gotta balance.
Find a happy medium. Okay, also be willing to explore sexual orientation. Like we said, it may be a phase, it may not, but you kind of have to explore that with them. And, like you said, don't disregard it, but don't focus on it. Maintain confidentiality. This is important because, you might be the only person who knows in their life. So obviously we would definitely need to keep that secret for them. Support the client with decisions about coming out, which, kind of weigh the pros and cons with them.
I guess to determine if they're ready to do that and accept what comes with that.
Educate yourself and provide accurate information. That's what we're trying to do, educate ourselves and educate all of you. And then be aware of the attitudes toward and stereotypes that you may hold concerning GLBT people. So, like, for example, I'm religious, but my views about this has changed completely ever since I started this program and just got to know other people, and just doing this research is just reinforcing that. So
I think that's important too, that no matter who you're seeing or your clients, it's important to leave your own self at the door and outside of it and focus on who's in the room with you. You're not going to agree with the lifestyle of everybody comes in there, the choices that they make, but that's why you're there for them, so to help them. So this is going to wrap it up for us. We can't wait to talk to you in class and get into some interesting discussions and share with you everything else that we've learned, because there's a lot. So we'll see you in class then.